I thought I might just tell you a bit about the Australian road train. They're the longest trucks on earth, with 3 or more full-size trailers, grossing 115 metric tons. Most road train tractors, that's what you call them in the US, are Max or Kenworths. Both have their tractors assembled in Australia, mainly using US parts. They're made right-hand drive, of course, because we drive on the other side of the road here. The engines are basically the same, but no smaller than 600 horsepower. The gearboxes are normally 18-speed road ranges. No lazy axles here, we need all the grip we can get. And the diffs are at least 80,000 pound. We have twice the number of air tanks to handle 3 or more trailers. You'll find that the tractors are a lot shorter than you use because we need the short trailer to manoeuvre the trailers to hook them up, 3 or more at a time. Plus short wheelbase is stronger, and there are other different changes that I won't have time to go into now. Of course, you cannot back 3 or more trailers very far. What we normally do is to take them into the depot and drop them off and split them up singly so they can be delivered to the individual depots to be unloaded. I work for Richmond Heavy Towing in the city of Adelaide, in the state of South Australia. The city of Adelaide is on the coastline, just 10 miles from the sea. All the bigger towns and cities in Australia are on the coast. The hot and dry centre of Australia, which is called the Outback, is thousands of square miles of mostly Crown land, which means it belongs to the government and is still undeveloped. A lot of the Outback is cattle ranches, as you would call them in the US. We call them stations here in Australia. They are hundreds of square miles each. The Outback is not good farmland. It's hot, dry, scrubby, very little water. The cattle drink at man-made water holes, which is water that's pumped up by windmills. The water holes are hundreds of miles apart, so cattle are moved all around by road trains. Not only cattle are moved around the Outback, all road freight is moved by road trains. The first thing is that in Australia, truckers are called truckies and not truckers, and the tractor is called a prime mover, not a tractor. In Australia, a tractor is what a farmer uses to dig up his fields. The best way to get in to start to drive road trains, the best way to go is to start driving small trucks and do that for a number of years, then start driving bigger trucks, and you go bigger and bigger trucks till eventually someone will let you loose on a road train. The two big makers of road train prime movers are Max and Kenworth. They have to be made to road train standards, which I won't go into a lot of detail now, but the chassis are made stronger, more cross members. The chassis aren't to be too long, so therefore we don't have very big sleeper cabs, but we do need room for lots of fuel tanks and air tanks for the extra braking we need for the 3 or more trailers. The reason we have road trains in Australia is that Australia is about the size of the USA, but most of the people live within 10 miles of the sea in a handful of cities, and the inland of Australia is made up of a few cattle ranches, mines and that sort. So we don't have freeways from coast to coast. The numbers of cars are few on the roads. The roads are narrow with one line down each in the centre, with traffic travelling in both directions. So with thousands of miles of roads between the cities and no hills to speak of, to cross road trains make a good sense to carry most of the freight from city to city. The average road train is made up of 3 full-size trailers plus dollies for them to turn, although the mining industry have huge ones with 6 or more, lot more, to haul freight on their own roads. December is actually the start of our summer, so Father Christmas is not pulled by reindeer in Australia, he's pulled by 6 white kangaroos, known as the 6 white boomers. Just joking, of course. The summers are very hot, especially in the inland, in the centre of Australia. It's nothing unusual to be 120 degrees Fahrenheit. The winters aren't too bad, they're mild. There's never any snow on the ground, but occasionally you'll get snow in the small hills we have, but most of the country does not have snow at all. As to what you can see driving in Australia, near the coast there is normal farmland, but in the outback you do not know what you'll see next. Lots of kangaroos around evening and early in the mornings as the sun's coming up. In a normal day in the outback, you'll see lots of wildlife, birds, big eagles and falcons, and of course the big emus, which are like the ostrich, but they're slightly different, about the same size but very big. Lots of snakes and wombats, and dogs which are actually dingoes, which are a native animal to Australia. These days a lot of trucking companies run 2 drivers in each truck, so one driver can drive while the other one rests in the sleeper cab, and that way they can continue going 24 hours a day without stopping. Most trucks carry a lot of fuel, normally enough to do 1 trip each way, because fuel is very dear once you leave the cities and head into the outback. The cost of carting the fuel makes it very expensive to buy in the outback. Of course, there's no McDonald's in the middle of the outback. What you normally find are small truck stops, or what we call roadhouses. They are like a little house in the middle of nowhere, where sometimes there might be a little 1-horse town, but there's very few people in the outback. The food you get at roadhouses are very good. It's normally steak and eggs and chips, good normal Australian food. Goes down very well after a long, hard day's driving. The bad part of the job is that you have to keep to a timetable. If you run late, you're normally docked, depending on the company you work for. But of course, if you break down in the middle of nowhere, you're not getting paid, and it can take sometimes days for the problem to be rectified, because you literally have to have people travelling 1,000 miles or more to come and service your vehicle. Driving's not too bad these days, because most of the trucks have air conditioning, and a lot of them even have little refrigerators to keep your drinks cold, and some have microwave ovens so you can cook up a very quick snack. So life's pretty comfortable these days compared to the old days. There is only a handful of places to stop on a 1,000-mile trip. Because there's so few people, there's not little towns everywhere like you find in a lot of countries. A lot of places there's no towns at all, but about every few 100 miles you'll find a roadhouse. As I said, the road houses are very small. There's normally only room for about 10 people to eat. Of course, there's no entertainment to speak of in these road houses. So if you do stop, it's only to sleep. But normally, as you say, these days with 2 drivers in each truck, it's just a matter of keep on going. Probably the hardest part of driving a Australian road train is the number of tyres you have to change. Because of the long straight roads and the constant driving, and with the extreme heat, it's not unusual to change 2 or 3 tyres a day. Of course, it's all done by yourself. There is no service personality near you to give you a hand. It's all done by the drivers themselves. You can't stop on the side of the road and wait for AAA to come and get you out. There's no one when you're in the middle of nowhere, thousands of miles from anywhere. It's either if you don't do it, you just stay there until it's done. A problem for the car drivers is a lot of them are too scared to pass you, and they'll sit behind you for miles and miles. And if you blow a tyre at the back, it is like a hand grenade going off. It can demolish their windscreens without any trouble at all. Another big problem with driving in the outback is falling asleep at the wheel. It is just so long at constant driving with no stops that it's very hard not to go to sleep at the wheel. A lot of times you can be lucky and just run off the road. There are very few very big trees to hit. You may hit a few little bushes, but then you just keep going and back onto the road and you're off again. The Australian average road train is 115 metric tonnes gross, and they are 53 metres in length. That's around 175 feet long. The Australian road train developed just after World War II, when there were quite a few US Army trucks left behind in Australia. Then people gradually got the idea of putting more and more trailers behind them. There was no limit in those days. A lot of times they never got above 20 miles an hour. So it was a very, very long drive in those days. The speed limit for a heavy vehicle in Australia is 100 kilometres per hour. Although in the middle of nowhere there's no one there to know what to pull you over, you can do whatever speed you like. But with a road train, you're not going to get much above 100 kilometres an hour anyway. You just have so much weight you're pulling. A lot of the road train drivers work on a 3-week rotation. Well, they'll work 3 weeks, then take 1 week off. As I say, with 2 drivers, it makes it a lot easier to keep on the go 24 hours a day. And there is such huge kilometres or miles to cover that you just have to keep going. A big problem with driving in the outback is the amount of wildlife on the roads. It's not uncommon to have kangaroos, big emu birds, and even livestock, cattle, especially on the roads. A lot of the properties, the farms, or stations as we call them, are so large they're not fenced. So it's not unusual to have cattle in the middle of the road. That's why we have the big metal bars in front of the radiators called bull bars. Because there's no way you can stop in time if you see an animal on the road. There are more kangaroos in Australia now than there was 200 years ago, because the more water that's pumped up from underground to water cattle, the kangaroos just breed like wildfire, just like rabbits. Can't stop them. If you're driving a road train, you have to drive day and night in turns. But if you're a tourist in Australia, it's not a good idea to drive at night, and especially not in the early morning as the sun's coming up, or late in the afternoon as the sun's going down, because that is the time when the animals are most active on the sides of the road, and it is very dangerous. That's just a little bit about driving road trains in Australia. If you'd like to find out more, check out my website at outbacktowing.tripod.com.